Good afternoon everyone, I am Mr. Ish. Thank you for joining me for this video. Guess the quadrant game is the name of this particular video. The variable here is theta. Given the information in each of these 5 questions, A through E, we have to determine what quadrant the angle theta falls in. The variable falls into which of those 4 quadrants? 1, 2, 3 and 4. Starting with question A, sine theta is greater than 0. Sine theta, cosine theta, this right here is a product of these two is less than 0. You know sine is greater than 0, therefore it's positive, but sine is positive in the first and the second quadrants. Cosine happens to be negative in the second quadrant, therefore an angle which is negative, it will make all of this into negative and your value will be less than 0. Therefore, we know now, based on this condition over here, and the fact that sine had to be positive, we're looking here at quadrant number 2, and that would be your answer for that question A. Question B, tan theta is greater than 0. But independently sine theta and cosine theta are negative or less than 0. We know tangent is positive in the first and the third quadrants. The one factor here which remains constant is the fact that tan is positive over here in the third, but sine and cosine are negative here in the third. Therefore your answer must be the third quadrant and you would be right. Question number C, cotangent theta is less than 0, sine theta is less than 0. Cotangent follows the same rule as tangent. If it's less than 0, it's negative, it must be cluing you towards the second and the fourth quadrants. But in the second quadrant, sine is positive, in the fourth quadrant, sine is negative. Both of these are negative in the fourth quadrant, and that would be your answer, quadrant number 4. How about this? Cosecant theta is less than 0 and secant theta is greater than 0. Now cosecant and secant will follow the same rules, the quadrant rules, as would sine and cosine. Cosecant being less than 0 or negative, it would clue you into third and the fourth quadrants. Secant being greater than 0 or positive would clue you into the first and the fourth quadrants. If cosecant is less than 0 or negative and secant is greater than 0 or positive, you know your answer must be quadrant number 4. Because in that quadrant, cosines are positive and sines are negative, and therefore their reciprocals follow the same pattern. Last question, number E. We have tan theta is greater than 0, meaning it's positive. In a product relationship, secant theta and cosecant theta is positive greater than 0. Which quadrant does theta angle fall into? We know tangent is always positive in the first and in the third quadrants. We know here that secant would be positive in the first and in the fourth. Cosecant would be positive here in the first and the second. Now these both could be positive and you'd get a positive result, but they can both be negative and you'd still get a positive result. So that tells you something, that you may have more than one answer. The fact that tan is positive is cluing you into the first and in the third quadrant. The fact that these are positive or both negatives is cluing you again into the first and the third quadrant, because cosecant and secant follow the same rules as sine and cosine. Therefore you are looking at 2 answers over here, depending on what the sign of cosecant and secant were. They were either both positive, in which case we are looking at everything here in the first quadrant, or they were both negative, in which case we're looking here at everything in the third quadrant. So you have 2 answers, quadrant number 1 and quadrant number 3. And with that, it brings us to the end of this particular video. Guess the quadrant of the angle theta, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day.